Welcome everybody to our monthly Kanab Chamber of Commerce meeting. I'm Pat Guerrero, current president of the Chamber. I do want to start by welcoming our new and renewing Chamber members, Zion's Bank, Honey's Marketplace, Citywide Home Loans, Wild Time Cafe, ERA Properties, and Grand Plateau RV Resort. So welcome to those businesses. Welcome to everyone. Today we have a couple of special guests from Impact Utah, Jared Nielsen and Eric Burton. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to them.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present to the Kanab Chamber. Let's see, I am sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am Jared Nielsen with Impact Utah. I am Regional Director for everything that is Utah County and South for our group. We've been around since 1995, and we can help, we specialize in helping manufacturers throughout the state. And in rural Utah, I can help any business. At a high level, what Impact Utah does, we share knowledge to improve lives. When companies get stuck, need new skill sets, or want to grow, they can reach out to us. We'll have internal and external resources. We provide training, we provide resources to businesses. And one of our key partners strategically is different area chambers of commerce. We find that your businesses, you're in the area, and so we love to work together with chambers. Things that we've got upcoming this week, this Wednesday and Thursday, we've got a couple of different training opportunities. They are being presented live from Davis County on Wednesday and from Vernal on Thursday. And those are just free business support things that we're looking to do. Companies can interact with us how they would like. That's the nice thing about my job. I just get to go find resources for companies. We've got companies who want to be on training lists and mailing lists, kind of on that end of the spectrum, all the way up to companies who are engaging with us on a monthly basis. There are certain things that we do that have a cost to them. Anytime that's the case, we make sure that we provide various resources in a proposal, and that all of that's clear before there's any sort of outlay that needs to be undertaken by the company. This, a little more about the presentation. I think you've received the 2 flyers. So on Wednesday, that will be our CFO, Rick Papworth, and he's presenting on 7 drivers of profits. He has a background as a CPA. That will be from 11 to 1 on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we've got Danu Ibarra. He's our Chief Marketing Officer and President. He'll be presenting on 7 steps to a successful digital marketing campaign. And both of those presentations you can register for through following the link that you received, or by going to impactutah.org and registering for the workshops there. As you can see on the screen, my email address is jnielsen, Nielson, @impactutah.org. And you are welcome to email me anytime after that as well. So I wanted to keep that short. I wanted to give you a quick flavor of things that Impact Utah is able to do, and direct you to our website as well. But what I really want to have you here, what I was excited for when Colette reached out about this opportunity, was to have you hear from Eric Burton. Eric Burton's one of our senior consultants. He has handcrafted today's presentation called The Power of Kaizen, and it's come as a result of his years of industry experience and consulting experience. I've seen this done several times, and it always goes over really well. Thankful to Eric to be able to present for us today, and we'll go ahead and turn things over to him.
Awesome. Okay. So really quickly, just so everybody knows here, let me exit out of this. If you are in Brady Bunch view, you're going to see Jared's screen because he and I are sharing a desk, but the person waving is the one that's actually talking. So your Zoom's all right. So your Zoom. All right. I'm not sure what happened there. Somebody got into the meeting that looked like they were ready to cause some fuss. Okay, so anyway, maybe Jared, while you're in there, you can kick them from the waiting room.
I tried.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I think Colette got rid of them. Sorry, guys. I thought I was monitoring that a little bit better.
That was hands down the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in a Zoom meeting. Okay, so I'm going to jump in here. Just so you know, though, if those of you that saw my video, I'm the one, Eric Burton, that's talking, but you're going to see Jared. So if you want a face to the name. So here we go. Let me share my screen, and we will jump into this. So let's go here. All right. So I'm just going to tell you all a little bit about myself really quickly. I come from industry primarily, right? So this topic that we're going to share today, I originally kind of just started in industry, but it is hands down the most popular topic I ever get. And I get a lot of positive feedback on it. And I think the biggest reason is because it's not industry specific. It truly doesn't matter where you work or what you do. This is applicable. And so a lot of my examples might come from industry today, but I want you to just think as we go through it about how it would apply personally. And it should be fairly easy to do because, it's a pretty broad topic. We're going to be talking about this idea of Kaizen here. And so really quickly, just to introduce it, I learned this in industry. I started at a company where we did about 20 million in sales a year. And I was there for 12 years of my career. And when I left, we were doing over 300 million in sales. And when we were at 20 million a year, we had about 200 employees. And when we were at 300 million, we were at about 600 employees. So we had tripled our tripled our workforce, but we were doing 15 times as much revenue as before. And if you're like me and you're cynical, you'd go, oh boy, I bet that company in that second time was just a slave driver, And the truth is that morale and engagement and everything, turnover was lower in the 600 and 300 million world. People were more engaged and having a better time. And really at the heart of this was this concept of Kaizen. So we're going to be talking about Kaizen today as a change strategy and why it's different. And then as soon as I explain what it is, people always say, well, does this really matter? And this is what we're covering today. So this is actually, this slideshow that I have is 2 parts. So part 1 and part 2, we will not be covering these bullet points. So if you start looking at your clock going, this guy's got a lot of ground to cover and we're only on bullet point 2, don't worry. This stuff is all for another time. We'll call that a teaser, okay? So the concept of Kaizen, quite simply, it's a compound word. Right? So a compound word like sunset or mailbox, right? It's 2 words that just get jammed together to mean one thing. And literally this idea of Kaizen is just a change for the better, right? So it's just this idea of an improvement. Now that's, if you speak Japanese, that's sort of the main base for the meaning of the word. However, in industry, this topic, this we'll call it a discipline, has come to mean more than just an improvement over the years. When we talk about Kaizen, we're talking about this idea of incremental daily improvements. Every single day, we're working to get just a tiny bit better every single day. And so right off the bat, if I say that definition, there's a pretty good chance that you said, whoa, 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 every day I've got to do something. And if you had that reaction, that's perfect, because what we're talking about in this training is this idea that that when you want to get better, our first tendency is to think about a redesign or some completely innovative new system, and we're going to tear the whole thing down and rebuild it. It's March, right? And so because it's March, it's a great time to have this conversation. And so in this conversation, the question becomes, how are New Year's resolutions going? And you don't have to answer, but if we start bringing up New Year's resolutions, the statistics show that by this time, half of New Year's resolutions are already dead. And I just want to point out that the way we're sort of wired to think about improvement is this idea that it's got to be big, right? It's got to be all at once. Or this idea, I'll write it this way, where we think, if I want a big result, then I must take big steps to get there, right? That's the idea. If I want a big result, I must take big steps to get there. And Kaizen is almost the opposite of this. Kaizen says we're going to take small changes, right? And by the way, if you think about how you change, most people, we put off change, and we put off change until it's so large in our mind that we don't have a choice but to do the change. And so we do this New Year's resolution thinking, right? So I always poke fun at my brother-in-law who does this, and my brother-in-law, he doesn't smoke. And if I tell you that he doesn't smoke, then most people can guess what his New Year's resolution is every year. It's to lose weight. And if you look at what he does, he hasn't been successful. And so every year he gets really serious about it. And he says, this is the year where I'm going to do it for real. And so what he does is he goes to the gym, and he doesn't just pay for 1 month, right? He'll pay to 6 months to a year up front, right? Sometimes he'll hire a trainer, right? He'll make fitness bets with friends, etc. And he does all this almost every single year, but this is all kind of normal stuff when people are talking about improvements. But Kaizen is a whole different mindset. Kaizen isn't about a redesign. It's not about some massive change, right? Kaizen is about saying, what can I do in terms of a small incremental change every day? Now, you might be saying, a small incremental change every day, that sounds really hard. How could I do a change every single day? And if that's what's going through your mind, you are not thinking small enough. And this is what we're talking about here, is this idea of the smallest improvement that you can do, and you go from there. So if the idea of making an improvement every day stresses you out, you need to shrink it. And if it still stresses you out, make it even smaller, right? We're talking about tiny little changes here, tiny little changes. So before I go to some of the high level examples, we can talk about, I'll give you one from industry. I worked in an industry where we had a chemical process. So I worked at a company that made synthetic diamonds for oil rig drilling. And the final process was a chemical process where we would treat our product. And that chemical process had a scrap rate of about 1 in 5 parts, had to get thrown in the garbage. Now, this is 1 in 5 parts of everything our company built was going into the garbage. Aside from the radical cost, there was environmental waste and breakdowns, there was lost morale, there was overtime, all of this involved in this. But this scrap was costing us about $750,000 a month, just roughly. Some months it was that much or more, some months it was a little less. We had hired PhD chemists, we had hired a whole team of fancy engineers to come in, and they had done redesigns, and they had changed tooling, and they had changed chemical layouts, and they had tested everything under the sun. And it wasn't until one of our operators, right, who gets, they run during the night, he's putting himself through college. He had this idea, a simple idea of how to fix our tooling. And in this case, it was just a little piece of plastic that got used up during our process. And he said, well, what if we just changed it a tiny bit? It cost nothing, this idea. It literally cost us nothing. And instead of throwing 1 in 5 away, we went to throwing about 1 in 999 away, or 1 in 1,000 away. Overnight, this change was made. And this is the idea. When we're talking about Kaizen, we're talking about small incremental changes, and they may not all have such a large impact. But the truth is that this Kaizen idea can have quite a bit of power when you let it happen. So I'm just going to, normally if we're in person, I would ask people to do a couple of these, but let's talk about a couple. So let's talk about stairs in the gym and British gold. So first off, stairs in the gym. There have been studies that have been replicated on this topic over and over. The most recent one I know of, I think, was done in 2014 or 2015 by Oregon State University. But typically what they'll do is they'll bring people in for a study, and then they divide them randomly into 1 of 2 groups. In one group, they pay for a gym pass, they pay for workout clothes, they pay for a trainer, teach them how to do all these workouts. And then another group, they go to their work and they talk about the importance of just getting small pieces of exercise in their daily routine. So they encourage them to take the stairs. And one group even went so far as to say, what if you just take 1 flight of stairs, and then every day you would add 1 step and then go back and go in the door and go back into your desk. And when they come back to this group, and they'll do it, slightly longitudinally, typically they'll come back 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, and 2 years later. And in every time they've run this case, guess which group is doing better in terms of fitness outcomes compared to the initial group? It is the stair steppers every single time, even though the people that were going to the gym had all of these incentives. Okay, another example of Kaizen is this idea of the British cycling team. And so I can lose a lot of time because this is such a fun topic, but the British cycling team, if you go back a little ways, so their name is Team Sky. And Team Sky in 2002 had not had a gold medal. They had had 1 gold medal in the Olympics in 76 years. They were so bad that one major bike manufacturer had asked them to stop ever riding their bike in public because they didn't want their bike to be associated with Team Sky. So a guy named David Brailsford gets hired in 2002. And I want you to imagine, just as much as you can, I mean, you might not be into cycling, but imagine if you were the coach hired to turn around this team that's so bad that major bike manufacturers, a national team is asking, please don't write our stuff. We don't want people to know you write our stuff. If you're David Brailsford, what would you be tempted to do and talk about in terms of change with your team? How might you talk about this idea? Chances are you'd want to say something like, well, we're going to completely redesign the bike for aerodynamics. And our fitness is just atrocious. So I'm going to bring in a new person and completely redesign the diet, right? And we're going to completely redesign our training so that we have better fitness, right? This would be the temptation. Remember, because the way we seem to be wired is that if we want a big result, we must take big steps. The first part of this whole presentation today for everybody on this call or whoever watches the video later is this piece of logic is not correct. And we will talk about why, but I just wanted to point out that I seem, and you probably seem if we talked in person, to be wired to think this way. If you want a large result, you must be taking big steps. And so David Brailsford, he had actually learned about the concept of Kaizen. And in a lot of business schools, they'll also call this topic marginal gains. And he said, I wanted to put this to the test. So instead, what David Brailsford did with the team, the cycling team, is they took every variable that could affect the race, and they just asked themselves one question: could we get 1% better on that variable? So yes, they looked at aerodynamics of the bike, but they didn't want to completely revamp it. They just asked if they could get 1% better. They looked at how rested their athletes were. They looked at how healthy in terms of sickness their athletes were. There was a whole slew of things they did. And if you list any one thing, you would think, does that really help? So let me give you some examples. For aerodynamics, they brought bike technicians and specialists in who trained them how to reach the hard to reach areas of their bicycle so that they could clean the dust off of the hard to reach areas up in the fork, just the dust, because they wanted to reduce the aerodynamic drag, not of the whole bike, just of that little bit of dust that was there. When they talked about how well rested their athletes were, they said, we need to get better sleep in a hotel. So they talked to Russian traveling ballerinas and dancers, and they said, you have a rough physical schedule as you travel all over the world. What do you do? And they learned that these Russian dancers would typically take their personal pillow from home to any hotel they went to. So they added that to their new regimen of things they do. They brought in terms of health, they brought in a surgeon to teach them how to wash their hands so that no germs would be left. And so when they were coming up into, every time they would wash their hands, they would practice this. The next thing they'd do when there was a race, for 2 weeks before a race, they would not shake hands with anybody. This was not about trying to snub anyone. This was about maintaining their health when they went into the race. So from 2002 to 2008, which is 6 years, the team practices these things. They go into the 2008 Olympics and the team wins 8 out of 10 possible gold medals. You might think, wow, is that just a fluke? Could that be a statistical anomaly? In 2012, 4 years after that, they win 8 out of 10 possible gold medals. And they now have the distinction of being the only cycling team in history to win 4 out of 5 in a 5-year period Tour de France's. This had never happened in history before. This was the same team. They didn't completely redesign. Instead, they applied and they stacked up all of these marginal gains. And when you look back, any single change didn't seem to be the one thing. But when you combine them all together, the output of the team was incredible. This comes from a book called Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard, is this quotation here. There's a clear asymmetry between the scale of the problem and the scale of the solution. Big problem, small solution. Now, these two researchers, these brothers, they were actually talking about the problem of malnourishment in the third world. And I'll leave that one up to you if you think that's interesting. But they talked about how small, simple changes have demonstrated how much we can reduce malnourishment in the third world countries. But this is the idea as we launch into Kaizen. You do not have to make massive changes to see large results on whatever improvement you're doing. Okay, so now the next thing, some of you might be exposed to this idea of Kaizen. I meet people from all kinds of different industries that have heard of it. It's far more popular now than when I first put this training together. The chances are pretty good that some of you have heard of this topic. And this is what it's this idea of trying out small incremental improvements. I find changes that I can do right now. I might even parenthetically say, without spending money. And when I say without spending money, it's not because I'm cheap. It's because if we say, well, I'm going to spend some money, I'm offloading the improvement to whoever I'm buying the solution from. Kaizen should be low stress. It should be a change system that you can do in addition to whatever strategy you're currently using in your life, in your business, in your relationships. You already have some strategy. Kaizen should be able to be added in without feeling like it's going to be something that breaks the camel's back. Now, quite often, some of the misconceptions I get about Kaizen are this. I'll hear people say, yeah, the Kaizen thing, that's great, but I have to get some business results. I need them. and I need them quickly. Another one I hear, and we'll talk about why these misconceptions are so broken. But another one I hear is, oh yeah, the Kaizen thing. I have a suggestion program, and they think that a Kaizen philosophy is the same as a suggestion program. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who's ever worked at some company. And I've seen these. I have seen these in banks, bakeries, and factories, where there's a nice little hinged wooden box with a slot on the top that somebody has built somewhere. And there's a little plaque on it that says employee suggestions. And somebody can write something down, fold it in a paper and put it in there. And how often the company looks at it is completely up to the company. But when I talk about Kaizen, it is not that. And I've heard people say, yeah, I got the suggestion thing. It didn't really affect my employees. That is not what we're talking about when we talk about Kaizen. And then interestingly, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'll hear people say this: I can't let people in my business make changes. I work in, and I've heard it all, aerospace. I work in medical industry. I work in finance. I work in coding. And if people just made changes willy-nilly, we would just have complete chaos, right? The idea is that everyone's just going to do these random directions, and in the end, it's just going to be this tangled mess of activity, which is not the case, and that's actually not what I'm advocating for. So there is some work. So let's talk about this. Number one, too slow to make a difference. In my experience, the single fastest way to get results is to start improving right now, not waiting and planning for the perfect solution. It's to start right now. This concept actually, interestingly, comes from World War II, right? In World War II, most of our trained factory workers go to war. And at the same time, the demand on these factories goes up. The production quota for the war goes up. So we have factories with less staffed workers trying to get more done. And in a lot of cases, there were housewives and women that would step up, think Rosie the Riveter, right? But they would step up and they would come forward and they would work in these factories. And in an old manual that goes all the way back to World War II, this concept of Kaizen exists, where they said, you know, don't wait around for one massive solution or a new machine to improve the output of your business. We do not have the time for that. We are at war and we need to get all of our improvements as quickly as we can. But this is one of the most interesting ones, because in my experience, Kaizen is the fastest way to make a difference. Let's talk about a gesture for employees. When done properly, Kaizen will engage members of teams like nothing else will. And then finally, Kaizen is not just for managers or engineers. You might work in an industry where there is regulation. This is the norm. Most of us are used to some kind of regulation, right? Whether that be government regulation for aerospace or FDA regulation for, nutraceuticals or something like this. Regulation is the norm. And so what happens is it becomes the job of the managers and engineers to, I'm going to say, we'll say, create the what is out of bounds for doing improvements. So we work with management and we train teams and people how to do improvements and what is sort of off limits and what's on limits. Okay. I've got all kinds of stories about how powerful Kaizen is. And some of you might be going, that sounds great. Why does this work? If I'm going to try a small incremental improvement, why would I try it? How does it even help? And so a couple of things I'm going to point out is just these three are the biggest reasons I've seen. And notice these all start to talk about how individuals perform either in teams or in their engagement. But really this first chunk when we're talking about daily Kaizen is about individuals. Okay, so the first one is Kaizen reduces victim thinking. Next, we'll talk, and I'm going to spend time on all of these. If you think, whoa, slow down, partner, don't worry. We're going to spend some detail on all of these. But next is when victim thinking goes down, We start to get engagement between individuals. And then finally, small improvements add up to huge gains. And I'll talk about 2 reasons why this is the case. So first, victim thinking, right? If I am a victim and I talk about my life, I say life happens, things happen. And if you're going to fill in this blank, most of you can say it to yourself right now. The word that a victim thinks is to me. Things happen to me, right? So in the case of a victim who comes in late to work and they say, well, I'm sorry, I'm late to work. I had a police officer pull me over and man, he was just a jerk and he harassed me. And they go through this whole story. And in the whole story, notice how it's just everything seemed to happen to them. But what I leave out is that I was speeding through a school zone with kids present, right? I leave out some pieces of information that actually matter. But to the victim, that's truly the way they see it. Now, here's the beauty of Kaizen thinking and why it can become just so stunningly powerful. If you ask yourself this question, what is the smallest improvement I can do today? Notice I'm not forced to compare myself to anyone, right? I don't say I work next to Colette and she's just a productive machine and she's super amazing and I'm not that way. I can still say, what's the smallest improvement I can do? And so no matter where somebody is, by the way, you're not either a victim or some kind of superhero. It's not either or. There's actually a whole continuum here. I can be anywhere on this continuum and I can ask myself this question and I can answer it. And so the first thing that Kaizen does, which is so powerful, is that it allows, it's like an on-ramp to the highway of improvement. No matter who somebody is, we can start asking this question. What's the smallest improvement I can do today? Well, now, why does this matter? A couple of things. So number one, just for people's happiness, right? This becomes a big deal. For those of you that like this topic, there's this concept you can kind of Google and read about, but it's this idea of self-efficacy. And some people will call it your locus of control, meaning, do you believe that you control your life or the control is quote unquote out there, right? If I believe that the control is out there, this is what a victim thinks, right? Things happen to me, I don't bring it on. Now, here's the problem. If I have low self-efficacy here or high self-efficacy here, people with high self-efficacy make more money. They get better grades. They have better, this is me trying to draw a wedding ring, everybody, but they have better relationships, long run. They have better health outcomes. This is a thermometer. Me trying to draw one. I don't know if I can pull one off. But this is all the things that happen when people have high self-efficacy. Now, when you go to the other end of the spectrum and you go to low self-efficacy, guys, if you were to come up with a list of terrible things you wouldn't wish on your enemy, people with low self-efficacy are likely to experience it. So likely to drop out of high school, be incarcerated, be addicted to drugs or alcohol, take their own life or attempt to take their own life, be in an abusive relationship. All of these things, if you have low self-efficacy, you are multiple times more likely to experience this in your life. Now, 30 years ago, this would have just been a really depressing conversation because 30 years ago, as recently as 30 years ago, we assumed that these kind of traits were fixed, meaning you were quote unquote born that way and it wasn't going to change. The beauty is we now know that this is not the case. We now know that a lot of brain traits like this, mental traits, are what we call plastic, or the brain has plasticity, which means not that your brain is made out of the same stuff as a water bottle, but it means that by thinking a thought over and over, we can make it easier to think that thought. So the beauty of this is if I practice Kaizen, and if I make an observation and I take action, my brain begins to learn that I can influence the world around me. So one of the single most valuable things we can do when we start practicing Kaizen, and we start encouraging those around us to practice Kaizen in our businesses, our teams, our organization, is as we start giving people permission to do Kaizen, the amount of victim thinking drops. And as it drops, there is a natural outflow of this. There's a natural outflow of reducing victim thinking. And that's this idea. Our engagement increases. Team engagement goes up. So I primarily consult manufacturing groups, but I have consulted other groups. I've consulted groups in software. Pretty much if a group has a repeated process, I've consulted, some kind of group for doing this. But one of the most interesting requests or conversations I have goes something like this. I'll have managers, I've had business owners, I've had CEOs say something like this. I'd really love to just raise morale, right? Do you know of any techniques to raise morale? And when I get asked about a technique, quote unquote, to raise morale, you probably can answer right off the bat what they mean. Typically, when someone says, I need a technique to raise morale, they're talking about things like a bonus, a pay structure, some kind of, can I do an early out? Can I do a casual Friday? They're looking for some little switch that they can flip. Can I give out gift cards? But we're looking for something because they acknowledge, wow, the morale is not great. And so I would like to remedy it, right? Just like Kaizen is one of the fastest ways I've ever seen companies get results, Kaizen is one of the best ways that I've seen groups improve the morale and engagement of a team. And I just want to point out why. I mean, I don't think that this is earth-shattering. Let me just point it out this way, right? Imagine HR, let's look at an HR function, and I'm not trying to beat up on HR. HR exists to do some of this stuff, but let's imagine I'm an HR representative and I'm planning something like a Christmas party, okay? And let's say I just make the world's best Christmas party. Let's try to translate the gain I would get in that Christmas party into, days of higher morale. Let's say I make the greatest Christmas party in the history of Earth. Think about this, and you don't have to unmute and answer, but just think about it to yourself. How many days do I get morale from that most perfect Christmas party ever? A week? More than a week, less than a week, a couple of days after the party? How long until the buzz and fun of that party has kind of worn down and we're sort of back to normal, right? But if we look at the work we do 40 plus hours a week, if I can make that work a little easier, a little safer, a little bit more enjoyable to be successful, now the question becomes, now how much mileage do I get out of that? You could argue that it never ends because I continue to do this work day in and day out. And so one of the things right off the bat, when we start looking at daily Kaizen, is that if we want a team that is engaged, if we want a team that's coming forward with ideas and they're trying to solve their own problems, one of the fastest ways we can start doing that is by making improvements. right? I would submit to you that, I'll use an example from an actual recent client. We can give people some of those perks like we've talked about. This group, they made t-shirts and hoodies, and they spent some money on t-shirts and hoodies. And did it raise morale? Maybe a little bit. But it raised morale a whole lot more and cost about the same. There was a little bit of cash outlay. When we cleaned out the break room, and in this case, the break room was also concurrent storage for spray paints, flammables in a cabinet like acetone, right? And other industrial chemicals are literally being stored 6 feet from the microwave where I'm heating up my lunch. And I don't have to tell you, but the whole break room was a mess and it was dirty. Which will raise morale more? And I'm not even trying to sound condescending, but I want to point out that it's most of our first instinct is to not do Kaizen. Our first instinct is to spend some money on hoodies and let some people, go to the movie or something like this. But by taking the time to clean out the break room, find a new storage area for the chemicals, repaint the walls, refinish the floor, and make it feel like I'm not in an industrial wasteland anymore, we have immediately made an improvement. And let me point out one more thing. Guess who did the work on that break room? The owner and the employees together. They cleaned it out together. They scrubbed the microwave together. They vacuumed off all the old chairs together. They pulled up the old dusty carpet. They painted the walls. They patched any holes in the drywall. They moved the paint together. Think about what that signifies versus here's a $45 sweatshirt. And so this is one of the things is as we improve, improvement becomes its own reward. I told you guys that I was at a company that went from 20 million to 300 million. When we talk about what we call as employee improvements, over this time frame, in the year 2002, we went from 17, not 1700, just 17 improvements. And my final full year there was the year 2011. In that year, we did 31,000 implemented employee improvements. And the most common question I used to get was, what do you give these people? Because the assumption and the thinking is that for someone to do any improvement work, I must be holding a carrot out there. I must be dangling that out there for them to improve, right? And the truth is, we would do a walk one time a month. We would let the people brag or explain their ideas, and we would give them a round of applause. And occasionally, very once in a while, if an idea was just really, really creative, we might say, here's a small dinner and movie ticket for you and your spouse or significant other, right? But that was very, very occasionally we would do this. This was the primary bread and butter. And I was in a position at this company where I used to give tours and people would ask this question and I was embarrassed because I didn't understand. We now know, and this is, you can see this quote here, that allowing people to improve is one of the most potent ways to increase morale and respect people. So this is from a Harvard Business Review article. One of all the things that can boost inner work life, the most important is making progress in meaningful work. So one of the things, if you want to start implementing Kaizen, you don't have to create some system for rewarding. You don't need to say, wow, you saved our company $10,000 for the year. Well, I feel like I have to give you some percentage of that. No, the point of doing Kaizen is to allow people ownership and make progress in the work that they find meaningful. So those are two very much about the individual, right? This is my symbol for employee, by the way, sorry. But these are about individuals and how they work on teams. Let's talk about Kaizen in general. There are two massive reasons why a small improvement can have a far larger yield than you first give it credit for. Number one, there's this idea of compounding. When I was young, I thought the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray was just kind of a funny movie because he lives the same day seemingly over and over and over again. As an adult, it's taken on a slightly different tone because there are days and weeks that I live in my life in work that feel almost indistinguishable from the previous day or the previous week. And this is the point of what businesses do. Businesses have processes and they have products, and we repeat these processes over and over to yield and sell more products. So if I make one small change that saves 2 minutes of processing time on a product that I make 10 times a day, that becomes 20 minutes a day. It becomes 100 minutes a week, right? And then it becomes 52 times 5,200 minutes a year, right? Just this change. That's just simple math. Now imagine that I take that 5,200 minutes a year, and in that time, I encourage my teams to come up with more improvement ideas. Now I'm getting compounding on that improvement, and my improvements allow me to seek more improvements, right? So I have what's called a self-reinforcing improvement or behavior, self-reinforcing behavior. The act of improving makes it easier to improve the next day. So this is one of the big reasons why small improvements can have far larger results than you'll give it credit for. I'm going to talk about one more reason. The other reason is what we'll call asymmetric payoffs. Asymmetric payoffs are something that usually work against us in life. Let's talk about an example of asymmetric payoffs. The casino knows that your money will go like this, up and down. But the trend over time, even if you're going up and down, they know that over time, your money will end up in their coffers. The total trend is asymmetric. If I happen to quit here, I might walk away with more money in my pocket, and the casino doesn't care as long as every person is running. What they want you to do is play for a long time. And if you play for a long time, they know that math will hold true and they will have your money. There's a reason why casinos are usually the biggest buildings in Vegas, and there's a reason why banks are some of the biggest buildings in every city, because they understand how to make money with your money. But think about it, your business, you, or in your life, you can take advantage of an asymmetric payoff. Here's how you do it. Uh-oh, it's gonna make me, let's see, escape. Sorry guys, let me rejoin. I'm not sure. I just accidentally killed my slideshow. Here we go. All right. Okay. So here's how you can take advantage of an asymmetric payoff. It's really simple. If I do a small change and it's good, it has a good effect, then I keep it. If I do a small change and it has a negative effect, this is not rocket science, everyone, I undo it. And so as time moves forward and I'm doing a bunch of small changes, the only ones I keep are the ones that worked. And so if a team is doing 100 changes a week, maybe only 10% of them are really good. It doesn't matter, because that means at the end of the week, they have 10 positive changes and 90 changes that weren't so great, and they learned from them. And so we start getting an asymmetric payoff in our teams. And so we start getting the ability to have teams that are learning and improving faster. And this is the idea here that we're going for as we go through this. So think about this. What would just a few minutes a day mean to you? A few minutes of energy spent that you didn't have to spend anymore. A few minutes of frustrating processing, a few minutes of rerunning the report because it didn't pull the information correctly, a few minutes of digging back through your email because you weren't sure, right? This is the idea of Kaizen. As we move forward, all of these ideas start stacking up and working in our favor. And so this is what I challenge all of you to do. Don't look for some massive breakthrough. When you leave today, simply ask yourself this question: what's something I'd like to improve? And what is the smallest improvement I can do today? Again, we seek the smallest, and we seek not to spend money because we want you to start today. If you left this presentation, you said, wow, that was a fun idea, I can't wait to try that tomorrow, I have failed you. Try it today. That's the concept and the power of Kaizen. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. That's the end of what I've got. So Colette or Jared, you guys can take it back over from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. Just again, a reminder for those who may have joined late, impactutah.org is our website. My email address is jnielson@impactutah.org. Eric's is eburton, BURTON, @impactutah.org. You're welcome to reach out to us anytime. There are the 2 classes that are free that we've got the opportunity to register for. You should have been given that information from your chamber email. And thank you so much, Colette, for the opportunity to start to get to know the Kanab chamber members.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. That was a wonderful presentation. And we look forward to hearing more from Impact Utah, Jared. So again, wonderful information. You've inspired me to write down some goals and start making that little bit of progress every day. So we do have just a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that we hear from our chamber members. Everybody just take a moment, no matter where you are, what you're doing. You might be eating lunch or whatever, but go ahead and take a second and put your cameras back on. And we will just do a quick round robin and get any updates. I wanted to call on Neil Brown first, if you're available to talk, Neil. As many of you know, Neil not only is a fabulous marketing person for Garcane, but Neil and his wife just purchased the Southern Utah News. And so they've made some nice, very small changes in the past couple weeks. And it's been fun to see those changes. So Neil, do you have any updates for us or any information about the paper that you'd like to share?
No, sorry, my video's not working. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, we're excited. It's a new challenge for us. And my wife is doing a lot of it while I still work at Arcane. But yeah, I just wanted to love the opportunity to introduce ourselves. And we're here to help the chamber as best we can too. So when you guys have information, or I'd love to do little reports on each meeting too. Like I'd love to do a report on this Kaizen training because it's so fabulous and so critical to our lives, our businesses, our health. I really love it. So Yeah, I don't have a lot to talk about, but just glad to be here and to support the chamber through the newspaper and the local media.
Thank you. We appreciate that so much. And we've really relied on Dixie and Dennis for the last umpteen years. And I know that it's just going to be a fun new chapter for the Southern Utah News with you and your wife in the driver's seat. So thanks, Neil.
Yeah,
Next, let's jump to Mike. Are you with us, Mike? Are you trying to join 2 meetings today? Are you with us? Sometimes Mike Sarles is pulled in a couple different directions. How about Robert? How are you doing, Bob? Anything new in your world?
Oh, hi there. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Great. Yeah, everything's going really well. Just trying to keep up with the demand of everyone trying to move into Kanab like
Yeah.
tomorrow. They all want to start building tomorrow. So that's a very a good thing to deal with. And that's why I attended the meeting today, was to learn how to implement, better improvements a little bit day by day, because we're all daunted by, having to do big changeovers and whatnot. But seeking out, smaller incremental improvements, which I've been trying to implement in terms of design, production, and client satisfaction. So day by day, we can only try to do our best every day. Thank you.
That's good news. So good to have you join us today. I know you're super busy, so I'm always happy when you can make the meeting. And Kanab's hopping. It is a busy place, and I think that again, between you and Dirk, I'm sure you're selling homes and building new homes and keeping all those Californians happy as they're moving into Kanab.
And not just California. I mean, I'm dealing with people from probably 7 or 8 different states all around the country. And people that are I got clients right now in Czechoslovakia that are, they're Americans, but they're out there and contemplating a building in the area as well.
Fantastic. That's fantastic news. How about you, Dirk? Are you just running like 100 miles an hour with real estate?
Been pretty busy for sure.
Things moving with commercial real estate as well?
Yep. Yeah, we have lots of projects that we're working on. I've been actively involved in the golf course
Good.
that we're working on designing and stuff, and that's looking really exciting. Like it could be a nice amenity for our community.
That's awesome. And I was going to say, should people be following the Water Conservancy to kind of get updates on that, or just read the local paper?
We're doing pretty regular updates in the newspaper too. We have a 3-part press release that's going in. Mike just finished the first one of it today. And, but, it looks really positive. It would have the potential of creating about 30 jobs in our area.
Great.
And this would be a destination golf course. We have the land contracts options for it. We have the water for it. And David McClay Kidd, you can look at his website. He's the top 5 golf course designers in the world.
Wow.
And we're really super lucky that he kind of fell in love with Kanab and is helping us with this project.
Well, that's exciting. We'll keep watching for the press releases then and keep learning more. Thank you. Mike, it looks like you joined us. I was teasing while you were on the other line. I said, Mike's usually trying to do 2 things at once.
Well, I had the mayor called. I'm on our city council. The mayor called me and I had to take his call. I apologize. But no, I really thank you so much for this presentation. I learned a lot. I just wanted to say that because it was good. I've heard of Kaizen. I've learned a little bit about it, but that was really good to see how you can use it in many aspects of life as opposed to just one. So Our program is, yeah, thank you. Our program's continuing to teach people step by step, little by little. I'm going to try to pretend it's Kaizen, but how to work from home remotely and how to be a manager from home. And it's going great. We're also teaching an e-commerce class this month. And so we're in the second week right now of that. So if anybody's wants to learn how to build their own website for their business to help you go online, we have those classes every couple of months. So, but remoteworkcertificate.com is where you find that. So,
and just a quick little thing to brag about with on Mike and his team. I was actually attending an economic development administration conference last week, and there was a guy from Purdue University who talked about Paul Hill and Mike Searles in their program and about how they're partnering and they're training people all over the country. So it was quite impressive. So
we are.
Congratulations.
We're doing this in about 12 or 13 states now with different groups. So it's really cool.
Very, very nice. Thank you for the update. Let's see, we've got Chelsea from Ensign Staffing. Any updates from you, Chelsea? Hi.
Just trying to get everything up and going again with businesses, getting employees registered with us, with the season starting again, trying to get some hotels on board and going from there.
It's a lot of work. By the way, if you have any job postings, absolutely go see Chelsea down at Ensign Staffing. She's located in the same building as Department of Workforce Services. And also we have our online job board through the Chamber of Commerce. It's Kanab Area Help Wanted. And I run a lot of job ads each week on that site. We have about 1,500 viewers on that particular page. So yeah, get us your job postings and we'll try and help you, right, Chelsea?
Yep.
Thanks for coming today. And I think we made it through everyone. Any announcements, Matt or Pat from Best Friends?
Oh, things are going pretty smoothly, and we still have visitors and volunteers coming. We haven't opened up to like the old numbers of volunteers, so we still have we've reduced numbers. We also are sharing all the vaccine information with staff. We're not requiring that anybody get the vaccine, but we really want them to be well informed, and we're encouraging that, even giving employees time off if they want to go get vaccinated. So that's some good stuff happening at Best Friends. And Matt, feel free if you have anything to add about anything happening at Best Friends. Nope, nothing. And then one chamber announcement, Colette and Matt and I have been talking, we really want to get in-person meetings going again. So, possibly April, we'll keep everybody posted. We may still do our first one or two outdoors. And then of course, by summer, it's going to be too hot to be outdoors. So, the more people that get vaccinated, the better. Everyone will be more comfortable being indoors. So Colette, I'll let you wrap things up.
From my end of things at the Dixie State University Business Resource Center, we are just busy like always. I'm serving a lot of businesses from Kane County in my day job, and you can find us on southernutahbusiness.org, and that's our website. It has tons of business resources, and you can book an appointment with myself, or you can actually book an appointment with my counterpart at Southern Utah University. His name is Jeremy Waite, and we are just here to help you, just like Jared and his group with Impact Utah. So thank you again. We'll wrap up. We're just a couple minutes over, but we appreciate your attendance today. So informative. Again, we can't thank you enough, Eric and Jared, for visiting with us today and teaching us. I know everyone's walking away with new information. So good to see you all. And we will see you next month, second Tuesday at noon.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.